All right. We working? We live? Can you hear me? Can you hear guitar? Can you hear voice? Ah, good lord, what an annoying thing. What an incredibly annoying thing. Yep. Good thing it's ambient night. Good ting. Yeah. That reminds me a lot of there's a builder here in the US named Wisniewski. I think his first name is Steve. That he's famous for making really, really, really cheap custom basses and guitars. That but they're also incredibly poorly made. But people actually buy them specifically because they're so ugly and poorly made. You know, they're like $300 or $400 for a basic one, and they're terrible, and they're unbelievably ugly. Let's get in mod view. There's a company called Torzal that has a patented neck design and body design called the Torzal Twist. That's kind of like that, where it's rotated, like even the body itself is rotated up here, so the neck has this kind of twist in it, so that as you move your hand up and down, it sort of follows the shape of your wrist or the way your wrist wants to move naturally. It's pretty cool on bass. I don't like it as much on guitar because you can't bend really. Lace, the company that makes lace sensor pickups, had a neck design similar to that as well, called the Lace Helix. All right, so let's update. Let me practice updating our stuff again. So, edit, command, guitar, Parker Fly Deluxe. All right, and then our pedals are probably the same. Let me check and make sure. Oh no, we gotta tweak that a little bit. Pedals. Right now we just have stuff in the loop. Just the digital delay, the old Caroline kilobyte. that we've used forever. And then there's the same old Red Panda reverb. But you guys can pick the pedals tonight. Yeah, I've played some of the RKS guitars. The Wave series, I think, was the budget series. The body was made essentially out of like a molded plastic with just like a wood neck added to it. But they made some really, really fancy ones with wooden bodies and a lot of different shapes and stuff. They sound kind of odd. Or at least the ones made out of the ABS type plastic stuff do. As you might expect. But I think they've been out of business for several years now, because I remember them getting blown out for like $400 or $500 some years ago. Hey, Facade, what's going on? The least it could have done was given me a notification that said your privacy settings have changed. Because I'm not looking in like system privacy settings to fix an audio issue. No, Wesstones are great guitars. I actually have one in a bag that's needs some wiring work done. They tend to have really, really elaborate wiring, but and something's gone wrong with this one. But great quality guitars built in the Matsumoku factory. There's a Thunder 1, so there was a Thunder 1 and a Thunder 2, and one of them was like set neck. I think the other one was bolt-on, but it still had the same natural finish where it had like a maple core and then I think ash wings on it. The one I have is a Spectrum LX, I believe. It's a set neck with like a sculpted heel, and it's like candy apple red with sort of a black stripe down the middle. It's a really great guitar, you know, like playability wise and everything. Just gotta figure out what the heck that problem is, because it has, you know, it has like a single or hum type setup, and then it has a coil split, a phase switch, and something else. Like each one of the three knobs has a push-pull on it. And none of the wiring diagrams online are correct. Your Hot Reels doesn't work at all? It's like usually if you've got a missed ground or a phase issue, you'll get something coming through. That made me just kind of suspect a cold solder joint or something. My monitor, my lighting is looking a little dark. I wonder if one of my lights got moved a little bit. They look okay. Yeah, there have been a few systems like that over the years. Actually, quite a few that have worked pretty well too. But it turns out guitar players are just super lazy. And so even if it's easy, they won't do it. Or at least won't spend for it. There's a Swiss company right now called Relish Guitars that makes a guitar where the entire back of the guitar, there's like a metal frame and the top and back are both wooden plates that the parts mount to. And you can just pull the back off. It's held on by magnets. And the pickup is connected via like a thumb screw. And you just take the thumb screw out, screw the new one in to connect the wiring, and then you're good to go. There's a French company called Wild Customs that's doing a really bizarre one where they have multiple pickups mounted to like a rotary dial with a big lever switch, and you pull the lever switch and it rotates the dial over to the pickup that you want. Then Ampeg used to make the Dan Armstrong guitars, which actually they still do. They make a reissue in Japan now, which had interchangeable pickup modules where the pickup contacts were two little like metal plates on the bottom that connected to two inside the guitar, and you could just plug it in to the side of the guitar so the plates made contact to swap pickups. The problem with that one is that it requires you buying their proprietary pickups. The Swiss company is called Relish Guitars. R-E-L-I-S-H. Their whole guitar is built around it, though. Like, their whole design is built around the ability to swap pickups super fast. The issue, of course, again, is you have to buy, like, their mounting brackets for it and all that sort of stuff. Now, if you could come up with one that lets you swap in, you know, like quick connector, swap in any off-the-shelf pickup really quickly, then you might be onto something. Yeah, it's a really, really kind of modernist design. That Reaver guitar that I have, the one from Scotland, uses these little terminals on the circuit board. If you put in their preamp, or on their weird little pots that just have like a tiny little set screw that you insert the wire into and then screw it down to connect it. Problem with that one is just the pots themselves don't seem to be very good quality. Or like the live wires. So they're meant to be essentially like EMG competitors. If I can get this repeat knob just the right place. Yeah, the blackouts. Same kind of thing. That's one of their super hot metal pickups. Yeah, the Dan Armstrong guitars, they were made by Ampeg. They were designed by Dan Armstrong. They're really cool. The early ones were all plexiglass. They weigh like 12,000 pounds. But they've made wooden ones more recently. I mean, they literally weigh 15 or 20 pounds. They tend to be ridiculously heavy. So those use like a plug-in system, so the pickups are like little, like epoxy sealed, units, and they have little plugs on the side that anchor them into the guitar, and then two little ground plates on them, I guess, or contact plates on them. Yeah, me too. Yeah, you should check out. Here, look up this guitar, or this maker. His most famous guitar is called the Birdfish, which is extremely unique. But all of his guitars are very interesting. He's from Germany. His main job is an automotive designer for BMW and Audi. But I would love to have one of his guitars, but they are expensive. If you're looking at the Birdfish, which is the one that's like the two big sort of pieces of metal with all the parts mounted to it, it works great. Like the actual shape of the metal causes it to sort of hold itself up if you sit down with it. It just holds itself in place perfectly. That was apparently like his I don't know if it's a doctoral project or how exactly it works, but it was his final engineering project before he got his degree or something back in the 90s. It looks really strange, and then you hold it and it feels pretty normal, and it sounds amazing and plays amazing. But all the pickups in that and electronics are all modular too. They just unscrew from the back and you can pop in different ones. And he has, you know, single coils and humbuckers all in those little cast molded units. So you can just swap pickups out on the fly. But it certainly solves the problem of, you know, body being in the way. But some of his other models, his model called the Tesla, which is like the headless with the very, very long upper horn that's connected to the body, has pickups in it that emulate like the sound of a bad ground, an ungrounded pickup, so you can actually make it hum. And then it has a microphone mounted underneath the neck, and one of the buttons engages that microphone, so you can get like feedback on the fly, which if you're sitting really close to the amplifier, pretty much just, you know, blows your head up, but has like a lot of really unusual features like that. Is this your catchphrase, Death Priest? You got a gimmick. You bought a DIY pedal kit? What kind of pedal is it? What sort of circuit is it? An overdrive, is it like a tube screamer type circuit? Most overdrives aren't too bad to build, but it depends on which particular one. Let me see. Good place to look. There's a site, let's see, I'll type it in chat, called DIYstompboxes.com. And they have a whole bunch of resources. They have like good forums and everything. Let me see. I'll open up let me click your link here. DIY OD1. Do. 1590B. Doesn't say what kind of circuit it is, but the fact that it's a 3-knob overdrive probably means it's like a tube screamer style. But there are a good bit of resources. Yeah, eventually we're going to be we'll be wiring and soldering stuff on stream. I've repaired a few of my own pedals before. I haven't built one from scratch, though. Keep Watch has. If he'd ever show up again. That's actually how a lot of like current pedal builders have gotten started. You know, they started off building kits and kind of learning as they went. You know, and then figured out like, okay, you know, if I change this thing in this circuit, you know, it makes the sound this way, that way, the other. Well, so sometimes playing completely randomly and chaotically is a lot of fun and does create really interesting results. But two, you know, if you want to be able to like compose or construct, you have to make sure that you have some basic technical ability, at least, you know, in this case. At least being able to go like, okay, if I play this note and follow it with this note, it makes this sound. And then you put that sound, you know, kind of on your color palette, so to speak. The UE400 and 405 are like the rack units, like the big fat rack units. Yeah, so they've gotten pretty expensive in the last few years because they contain, in many cases, they will actually contain the original Tube Screamer circuit. That's super, super collectible. And once it kind of got out that they had those original circuits in them that were really desirable, the prices started to go up. Because you used to be able to buy them for like $100. And then over the last few years, people have started asking more and more and more, going, oh, it's got the original TS-808 circuit in it. Let's see. I can tell you what they've been selling for here lately. Let's do the UE400. You know, I wouldn't say they're not particularly studio quality or any such. They're just, you know, good quality classic Ibanez effects, which are, you know, collectible in their own right. When you get into like proper studio rack mount processors, they get way more expensive than that. Like look up the price of some Eventide or Lexicon processors. It looks like they've been selling for between $200 and $300 here. The 400 anyway. The 405. So the F10, you got an LTD F10. Is that the like the forest body shape, the sort of pointy one? I mean, it's probably fine. Most of these companies make good beginner guitars. Yeah, that's the forest body shape. Yeah, that's perfectly fine, dude. You know, one of the big things that's really useful with a beginner guitar is learning how to set it up, or finding someone who can show you how or who can set it up for you. You know, if there's a music store local to you, they can do that. They'll charge you for it, obviously, but there are a lot of internet resources about how to set up a guitar to play properly and to play well. And that's a big thing a lot of people don't realize when they begin it. When they start out, they get a beginner guitar from a package or something like that, and it comes out of the box and stuff is out of adjustment. You know, so like the saddles will be too high, or they'll be uneven, or the neck will have a little bow in it, and there's actually a rod in the neck called the truss rod, which compensates for that bow to straighten it out. And if there's too much dip in the neck this way, it'll make the strings really high and hard to press down. If the has too much bow this way, a hump in the middle, the strings will buzz off of it, and you won't get a clean tone out of them. But so setup is basically setting up the instrument and the strings to play in the way that you want it to play. So for instance, in the case of my guitars, the way I set them up, I tend to like a very low action, which means I like the strings to be close to the fingerboard. Some people like the strings higher up because they press harder or they hit harder with their right hand, one or the other. Usually though, when you're a beginner, you don't want to go really high because it's going to, one, it's going to hurt your fingers a lot more, and two, you don't want to have to fight the guitar when you're trying to learn. So when I set it up, you know, I'll put on whatever strings I want to put on. I usually use light strings, 9-gauge strings. Sometimes I use 10s on certain guitars. And then once I put them on, I'll go do what's called sighting the neck. So I'll look down the neck. I'll close one eye and look down the sides of the neck and see if I see any bow in it. So if there's a dip like this, I'll tighten the truss rod just a little bit at a time. Uses an Allen wrench in most cases. I'll tighten it a little bit, then let it sit for a while and check it again. Tighten it a little bit more until I get it to where there's very, very little bow. Because I press very lightly, I don't need a lot of bow. Some people who press really hard or hit really hard need a little bit more bow so there's room for the string to vibrate. That bow is called relief. If you look up like setup guides, they'll use the word relief to talk about that. But if you don't have enough, like if the neck is perfectly flat or if it's even bowed back the other way so that there's a hump, when the strings vibrate, they'll hit the frets in the neck where it's humped up, and they'll choke out or make really bad buzzes, stuff like that. Then once I've done that, I'll go down to the bridge down here and I'll set the bridge height or the saddle height. So if it's like a Strat type guitar, you can set each saddle individually. If it's like it looks like the bridge on your guitar is what they call a tune-o-matic bridge. So the whole bridge is like one unit, and it has screws on the left and right side that let you raise and lower it. So you can kind of tilt it. Usually you want it to be tilted up so there's a little more space for the bass strings to vibrate because they're bigger. But you can adjust how close the strings are to the fingerboard that way, right? So you can get them very, very low, or you can raise them up higher that way. And that's going to interact with however you have the neck set. Then raise or lower the pickups to get sort of the optimal sound. If the pickups are closer to the strings, they'll be hotter and more aggressive sounding. If they're farther away, they'll usually be cleaner and clearer, but not quite as aggressive. If they get too close, the strings can hit them, or they can actually interfere with the strings' vibration a little bit. So the pickup switch, I'll show you a clean sound so you can sort of hear the difference. The pickup switch is just going to determine on what particular sound you're going after. So if we use the neck pickup is going to have, in your case, I think it was like a little rail style single coil. Hold on a second, let me close these extra windows. But the neck pickup is going to be usually a bit darker and thicker sounding than the bridge pickup. So this is my neck pickup. The middle is going to give you a combination of both pickups, and usually you get a little bit of something called phase cancellation, where the certain frequencies cancel out, and it makes the sound a little chimey compared to an individual pickup. Then your bridge pickup, which is a bridge humbucker, it looks like in your case, is going to be the hottest and most aggressive pickup you have, and because it's back near the bridge, it's going to give you a really edgy sound. Second, since I need to turn the levels down a little bit. But the tone knob basically depends on how it's set up. The tone knob is going to roll off your high end. So this is my tone knob all the way up. This is my tone knob all the way down. So it makes my sound darker. So like if you find your sound's like too bright, you start turning your tone knob down and it'll kind of mellow your sound out. But so like if I'm playing, go over to a distorted sound. Like if I'm going to play like a metal or hard rock lead and I want it to be like really sort of thick sounding, I'll use the neck pickup. If I want it to be really edgy, I'll use the bridge pickup. And if I'm going to play like riffs, I'll use the bridge pickup because it's tighter sounding and cuts through better. The neck pickup tends to be kind of muddy if we do that same thing with it. Bring that level up a little bit. So neck pickup, bridge pickup. It's a lot tighter. You'll start to hear it more. The more you play, the more you'll be able to tell a difference. And it also depends on the settings you're using on your amplifier. Like if you're playing with the gain and cranked all the way up and the bass control especially cranked all the way up, it'll really kind of blur the distinction between them. So neck pickup, both pickups, bridge pickup. When they get kind of grungy and rusty and dead, you know, if your strings are starting to change colors and get discolored, then it's usually a good idea to change them. They'll also start to get like kind of nasty feeling, and they'll start to sound very dull. When they're extremely dead, they'll start to just completely lose their ability to stay in tune as well. Most people, if they're playing regularly, are going to change, you know, once every month or so. It also depends, though, on the chemical composition of your sweat. because for some reason it seems like my strings stay alive a pretty long time, but at one of my friends, if he even looks at my guitar, the strings will just turn brown and rust. Like he has to change his strings every week if he's playing regularly. Yeah, if you get really old packs of strings, especially if they weren't sealed, a lot of modern brands will actually like hermetically seal the package. But if they're not sealed, then yeah, they can rust. They can oxidize and rust. Yes, it requires both a chemistry and an electrical engineering degree to play guitar. You'll find out pretty quickly. You know, if you put a new set of strings on and within a week they start to turn brown and grungy and they start to get this kind of really rough feel to them, then you've got highly acidic sweat. And there are different string materials too. You know, if you have stainless steel strings, they generally will take longer to get that going on than nickel strings will. They're all just factors that, you know, affect when you might need to change strings. I'm pretty sure there's there's a builder named James Trussart who builds guitars with metal bodies, and I'm pretty sure he made one with a stainless steel body. The neck is still wood. But he does a lot of stuff where like he'll like engrave different stuff into the metal bodies, or he'll like rust them out. They're pretty cool. Then companies like Electrical Guitar Company make guitars completely out of aluminum. Alright, you guys pick some pedals. Use some of your points. 100 points to pick a pedal, because I want to change pedals up some. We can do up to 5, I think, just because of power supply limitations at the moment. Oh snap, you used the expensive pick-a pedal. Dang. I forgot to... Wait, is the cheap pick-a pedal option on there? Let me make sure it's there. Oh yeah, it's the very first one. Well, daggone. Well, I can refund. I'll refund you those 1,000 later, so you won't have used up 1,000 points on something that's supposed to cost 100. Alright, Satan pedal. There's a few ways we can interpret that. Because I've got... Some pedals that can induce complete chaos. Which one would be the best one though? Maybe the glitch computer. The Moog pedals? Yeah, I've got several Moog pedals. All right, I've got an idea. I've got some ideas. Talkbox are similar. I don't have a talkbox. I do have a filter pedal that can get kind of vocal, but I can't actually talk through it. Talkboxes are gross, by the way. If you've ever used one, having that metal tube or that plastic tube stuck in your mouth is not pleasant, and it makes you drool all over yourself too. I used to have the Danelectro free speech talk box. It was grody. All right. So I'm gonna go get. Grim, did you pick something? So I'm gonna go get a really chaotic pedal for Death Priest. And then I'm going to see if I can scratch up a filter pedal to make some vocal sounds for Ofacade. Get some fun stuff. Yeah, you definitely don't want to use Talkbox. You actually, you're supposed to go just like buy the tubing and replace the tubing if you buy a used Talkbox. Some people just cut off the end though when it gets too slobbery. Get some fun stuff. Doesn't mean nothing. All right, hold on. So we're going to do. We're going to do this guy for Death Priest because this pedal is just pure chaos pretty much. All right, this is going to go in front of the amp. I think you just run on 9 volts, right? All right, so start hooking this guy up. I can get my power over here. Most of the, actually a lot of scales, once you get outside of that original group, do pretty much just have names like mode 1, mode 2, mode 3. So like this, the modes of the harmonic minor scale are harmonic minor, which is the first one, then second mode of the harmonic minor, third mode of the harmonic minor, fourth mode, etc. There probably is a pedal called Death Priest. I'm sure like a company like Abominable Electronics makes pedals that have like black metal themes and stuff. So probably do. But the Phrygian, Mixolydian, and Locrian tend to come from the way that the modes used to be perceived. They actually used to be different scales entirely in many cases from what they are now. But back when like early music theorists were talking about them and were kind of explaining the ideas of modes and how they should work and stuff, they tended to give them names that sort of reflected the sort of sounds where they came from. So like all those like Phrygia, at Locria, Lydian, all those are regions around Greece and Turkey. Those from that particular area around the Aegean Sea and stuff. And because the modes and the ideas tend to have their origins in those particular areas, they associated them with the types of music and sounds that they heard from those regions to start with. These days, they're not really similar at all. But if you go back into really old music books, I'm talking, like 12th century, that kind of stuff, 12th, 13th century, then you start to see the old versions of the modes, and you can kind of hear how, oh, this sounds sort of Turkish, this sounds sort of this, that, or the other. But it's just kind of a convention that's held over from that. All right, so getting this one hooked up, and then I'm going to find, we could either use a tube zipper, or we could use the RoboTalk. The RoboTalk might be fun, but it takes 2 batteries. Let me see if I can get it working. It doesn't take a power supply, unfortunately. Screwdriver. A pair of 9 volts. Alright, so we're going to use this guy, the RoboTalk, for the sort of vocal sounds. It can also do a couple other interesting tricks. But annoyingly, this is from the early 2000s and back in the sort of early days of boutique pedals in the late 90s and early 2000s. Stuff like power jacks and stuff were, oh my god, what an extra expense. It was like $30 to have them add DC power jacks to this instead of just running it on batteries. If I'd have been the original owner, though, I would have definitely ordered them because, my god, replacing 2 batteries constantly, because this is a pretty high current draw pedal too, incredibly frustrating. I guess I could ship it off to somebody and have them added. I don't have anything to drill the enclosure with. This is based on an old Oberheim sample and hold circuit. You can't see the component side of the board, but you can see the relative complexity of the circuit just from the back side of the PC board in this. Alright, let's see if this battery's any good. It's okay. Get a little zap from it. Like how there's no clip to hold the battery in. Oh, it's on the back side of the plate. It's like, why is the battery not just supposed to float in here? Yeah, that one's okay too. I'm gonna have to restock on some 9 volts soon though. Alright, so let's get the battery in the battery clip. This should make a pretty odd combination. Graham, did you ever pick anything? You just said get something fun, but you gotta be more specific than that. I'm just gonna put like 2 of these screws back in so I don't have to unscrew quite so many later. The biggest pedal with the fewest knobs. Let's see. Biggest pedal with the fewest knobs. Probably be like the Rotosphere. Be the Pog. The Pog technically doesn't have any knobs at all, so I could kind of pull one on you with that one. It just has sliders. All right, patch cables. Where have they gone? There's one. We could get pretty wacky. We haven't had the Pog out in a while. Maybe we'll do that. I'll go get that one. So we want it before or after the fuzz? We definitely want it before the filter. I think we want it before the fuzz too. All right. Getting there. Getting there. All right, so we're going to put the filter last. Plug that in. All right, I'll go get that one. come to think of it, this would probably be the biggest pedal with the fewest knobs because it just has like 3 on and off switches. But this one will electrocute me if I plug it up. So. Which admittedly would be pretty metal. Oh, dude, you can do a ton. You can do a ton with software. Most of my pedals I've bought used very cheaply, though, or I've gotten at cost, you know, from working at music stores. But I've just always found it a lot more fun to actually have a knob to turn. All right, so where am I going to plug this in, though? I think I have to go over here. Go through this way. All right, last time this pedal was getting really noisy, too, which isn't a good sign. Under the cable. All right. Yep, you got power. Hatch cable. Where'd it go? There it is. Way over here. Way over here. Let's go to this side first. So all right. I think we're good. Well, I would. The trouble is, I don't know, you know, what you have access to and like what's cheap compared to here. Because for instance, there's like a Japanese Ibanez 7-string at a store here for like $189 with a case, which is an amazing deal. But obviously you're a long way away. All right. So let's start fiddling with some stuff and see what we get. All right, volume, there we go. That's very important with this pedal. Pre-clip, pre-gain, turn pre-gain down, turn that noise down. Basically just turn everything down on this pedal for the moment. I don't remember which knob turns what on. Yeah, $189. It's an AX7521, which is the sort of like double cutaway Les Paul shape. All right. Now, I've got to remember these things, this company basically just made pedals with lots of knobs that do really unpredictable things. So I've pretty much just got to figure out, try to remember what does what and what's going to, you know, not make the amp explode. Wow, the 7421 is that expensive down there? I'll send you a link to the exact guitar in Discord. Hold on. I don't know if they'll ship internationally. I mean, they should. They do a lot of... I mean, they've been around forever. Let's see. But you'll have to, you know, contact them and ask. They're not, you know, Guitar Center or anybody. They're a local store. The only reason I didn't buy it was because I didn't like the color. They thought it was a like a budget model when it came in. Let's see. I'll message it to you. Facade. And they priced it like a budget model. And I told them that it was a nicer model, but they kept the price the same. You might have to get Alec to do it because I haven't been going out like down into the city like that, and he lives down there. But I bet we could figure it out somehow. All right, so let's get stupid with this. Let's take this hideous fuzz sound and let's add some sub-octave. Oh my gosh, that noise floor. Why are you so noisy now? It was never this noisy in the past. It's like a gigantic destroyed organ. Yeah, I think that color is the only reason it hasn't sold. The other color that guitar came in was like, I think they called Black Cherry or something, or Black Cherry Metallic, or Cherry Fudge Metallic. Which was like a dark metallic purple, which is much nicer. But that model came out during the nu metal era, so I guess they figured they had to make one in an official nu metal color. I mean, you don't need to be an emotional person to play well. There are lots of people who are fantastic players who I wouldn't necessarily consider to be super expressive. The issue is if you're trying to use your instrument to communicate, to say something or express something, I mean, it's got to come from somewhere. Otherwise, you run the risk of just kind of being a machine. I will say that as a rule, as you get more involved in music, the more you do it and the more you play, the more you start to kind of find emotional access. So the more you start to kind of bring stuff out of yourself that you might not have thought was there or you might not thought would come out at least. All right, so let's add. Yeah, if you're playing like super technical neoclassical kind of stuff, in a lot of cases you don't necessarily want to be hugely expressive because the way it has to fit into time, like the way it has to sort of lock into the beat and stuff like that, that could actually get in the way. In those cases, the sort of emotional content tends to be carried by like the harmonic ideas, like the sort of sounds of what you're playing. Oh no, death metal, most forms of metal are extremely emotional. It becomes more so about the sort of full-on sonic assault, though, expressing all of that via the impact of the music and the lyrics than it is necessarily about playing, a really emotionally beautiful or whatever kind of line. You feel only unadulterated rage. That's too low. That's only picking up. Set the range knob higher. Woo! There we go. Black metal is better than death metal. I'd actually probably be inclined to agree. Let's lower the frequency a little bit, see if we can make it a little less sharp. loud pedal. Alright, so let's go back and turn this guy on again. We're going to get all this noise. So chord voicing is referring to the particular arrangement of the notes in a chord. So let's take like a really basic chord like a C major chord. The notes of a C major chord are C, E, and G. Turn the delay off for a second. C, E, G. If we play those in order, we get something like this. Right? Then we can repeat those, so we can repeat another C, another E, another G, etc. But those tones can be put in any particular order. So we could do C, G, C, E, like this. We could play what's called an inversion, which is where we put a note that's not the root note in the bass. So E, G, C, E. You can even grab a high C like that. These are all different voicings of the same chord, just those C, E, and G. So if you're trying to write a song or compose a piece, in most cases you want to do what's called voice leading, which is looking for ways to sort of connect between the voicings of the chords that you want. So for instance, like if I'm playing this C, and then I want to follow that with, let's say, an E minor. If I go down to this E minor, the voice leading is very disjunct. It's kind of abrupt. So this voicing sounds like it's making a big leap down to get to that E minor chord. However, if I go from, say, this voicing to that voicing of E minor, because this is a higher octave of E minor, suddenly that connects much more smoothly. So then the chord voices lead into each other in a smoother way. And that can get really complex, you know, and that's what makes a lot of the great composers so amazing, is they have very interesting and unique ways of linking complex chords to each other and voice leading through the entire piece of music in really elaborate ways. And as you start to add more notes to the chords, then your possibilities become even more elaborate. And then you have guys later on who decided they were just going to completely reject voice leading and try to make it sound like it's jarring, you know, like it's just jumping from one chord to the other. So you start getting these sort of modernist sounds where you have like, you know, instead of this singing, finding ways to link those chords, it just moves directly. Without really paying attention to the conventions of voice leading. But so in brief, the voicing is simply the arrangements of the tones, the notes of a chord. And there are many, many, many different voicings for every chord, because a chord at minimum is 3 notes. The guitar has sort of its own set of voicings that sort of work under the fingers. Piano has a lot more. And then obviously if you're writing for orchestra, then you have an enormous range of voicings. Right. Is our switch going bad? What's the problem? Yeah, I think our switch is failing. these little like this particular version of the true bypass switch is kind of crappy. This, instead of being like a mechanical switch, a full mechanical switch like your regular DPDT switches, this is like a push switch that presses down on a plastic switch, like a plastic plunger inside of a little box mounted to the bottom of the metal switch. And eventually that box starts to kind of get stuck a little bit too low and the switch doesn't engage consistently. It's really annoying. All right, so let's add our fuzz back to this. That's a weird sound. It's like causing the filter to open really gradually as the voltage rises in the fuzz circuit. Started. Starting to turn into a synthesizer. $300 shipping. Oh man, that's brutal. Don't ask me why that note was that loud. Alright, so now let's switch to the other function of this. Now, how do I change the pitch of the oscillator is the question. Yeah, so we actually talked about that this past Monday for minor keys and 2 Mondays ago for major keys. Those Roman numerals represent the chords that are based on the tones of a given scale. So, for instance, the modes that come from the major scale are Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian. Right? Each one of those gets a chord. The chord that comes from Ionian is the 1. The chord that comes from Dorian is the 2. The chord that comes from Phrygian is the 3. Comes from Lydian is the 4. Mixolydian the 5. Aeolian the 6. And Locrian the 7. And there are songs that go in order. So you could have a song that goes 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. But most songs tend to jump around. The chord progression is just the sequence of whatever that sequence happens to be. You know, so 1, 6, 2, 5, 1, 3, 6, 2, 4, minor 4, etc. That's all the chord progression is. There are no rules about which chords you have to play after which, but there are conventions. There are things that you normally hear, especially in a certain style of music. You know, if you're listening to jazz music, you tend to hear the 2-5-1. You know, if you're listening to pop music, you might hear the 1-4-5. If you're listening to, old rock and roll and stuff like that, you might hear like the 1-6-4 minor 4-1. Any number of sequences are possible. But it has to do, again, with the chords that come from the modes of a given scale. In this case, the modes of the major scale or the modes of the minor scale. There's even, we actually have charts that I wrote for those in the Discord, in the chart section. All right, so what the filter is up to now is something called sample and hold, which essentially is cycling random voltages through the filter range, which is why this pedal is called the Robotalk. Yep, you absolutely must. Those things are all imperative. Don't forget that the theory itself covers everything from rudimentary mathematics to set theory to physics. Because at a really high level, then they get into like analyzing, well, okay, this particular frequency, this string vibrates at this frequency, and therefore if we play this other note, it vibrates at this frequency and creates these beat frequencies in between, and all that kind of crazy stuff. You can go as far down the rabbit hole as you want. That's the cool thing. Or you can just play the thing. Yep, friggin' Pythagoras. Curse you, Pythagoras. Alright, hold on, let's see. What's the range knob do? range knob all the way down. Let's go with a weird setting. Let's go with it 1 octave down and 2 octaves up. Let's bring our highs down. I can usually get pretty close by ear, but if I'm going to play with a band or anything that's like really critical, then I'll definitely use a tuner. Or if if I'm doing a lesson or something like that, I'll make sure we use a tuner so we're in tune with each other and to help the student get in the habit of tuning. But I've gotten to where like my relative pitch is pretty good, so I can usually get within a quarter tone or so without one. But I don't have perfect pitch or anything like that. It'd be really hard to play guitar with perfect pitch, honestly, because guitar is never actually in tune. It's like tripping now. It's like, what? You can just get into sound creation and not ever have to actually play anything. Just get pedals that do all the playing for you. Noise floor. Man, that's like Angry Bees. Any relation to Harvey? 'Cause I'd prefer not to know him if that's the case. Well, yeah. So the entire 12-tone system, like the idea of dividing the string or the octave up into 12 equidistant semitones, is not really perfectly accurate. It's a compromise to give us 12 tones that are approximately in tune, because otherwise you wind up with like the true temperament style frets that are all weird and misshapen to try to compensate for the appropriate distance between the tones. It also tends to sound a little weird to us because we're so used to hearing them divided up this way. But yeah, look up true temperament and you'll find out like a lot of info about it. And see the really strange looking frets. So if we turn the post gain down, we get a fairly normal fuzz, I guess. Still kind of synthy. Smash Mouth? No, theory is simply describing, the sets of interactions that exist based on the subdivision of the octave into 12 tones. If you use, say, an Indian musical instrument, or a Chinese or Japanese musical instruments, they use different sets of subdivisions, or Middle Eastern for that matter. They'll use microtones, notes that are in between our notes, and they have a different set of theory, essentially, a different type of music theory that will apply to those. But Western music theory, though, is based on the idea of 12 semitones, the octave being divided into 12 tones. The distance between those tones, or what constitutes equal distance between those tones, though, is what temperament is talking about. So if you sit down and you do like actual mathematical analysis of what would constitute essentially like a shift in frequency to subdivide that octave into 12 tones, you get these different sets of ratios, right? It's like logarithmic. But most of our instruments use a system that approximates them rather than does them perfectly accurately, because you would wind up with very strange fret spacing, especially as you went from string to string, or on various other instruments. On piano, it would totally change the lengths of the strings. You can do it more easily on a piano than you can on a guitar or on a fretted instrument like this, but it does take a lot of time and effort. There are several different kind of concepts as to which temperament is the most natural or the most accurate. This 12-tone equal temperament, where everyone effectively sounds like it's the same distance from the tone before it or after it, that is just kind of like been settled upon as the easiest or best approximation of the subdivision in the 12-tone system. The 12 tones was devised during the Baroque period, predominantly the 12-tone division, to make it sound so that any particular thing could be played in any particular key. Before that, like say during the era of Gregorian chant, things were much more modal, and if you wanted to play a particular song or a particular type of music, you had to use one particular scalar mode in one particular key, and if you wanted to play it in a different key, it either wouldn't work because of the way the instrument was constructed, or in the case of a fretted instrument like a lute, the frets would have to be moved because the frets were just tied on at that time. They were pieces of string, and you would have to actually adjust and move the frets to lay out for the particular scale or to intonate properly for the scale that you wanted to play and the chords that you wanted to play. The 12-tone system that was really first kind of really emphasized by and stressed by Bach and Vivaldi during the Baroque era found that, okay, if we make these all sound like they're essentially the same distance apart, if we have these 12 equal tones as opposed to 7 unequal tones or 5 unequal tones or however many unequal tones, then we can take the same scale formulas, like say the major scale pattern, root, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step, and we can play that on any of the keys. We can play it starting on G, and it'll work the same way as G sharp, as A sharp, as B, as C, etc., etc., etc. So what it did by having 12, it let them divide it up, as I said, to approximate an equidistance between the two. I don't know, I haven't watched the video. The title seems a little clickbaity to me. I would wager, I haven't watched it, but I would wager that the point probably has to do with the fact that the West tends to ignore a great deal of other musical theory systems. And then also tends to try to cast them in the context of their own music theory systems. But again, I haven't watched it. I haven't watched any of his stuff in a long time, really, and I don't watch many YouTubers like that do kind of theory explanation things. I tend to just watch people who play. Actually, the particular reason that I quit watching him was he did a series of videos some years ago where he had people send in their own compositions to critique them. And I thought a lot of the critiques or points that he made were not very good ones, frankly. They tended to lean towards a particular type of musical education, a particular type of music school and approach, and would dismiss the fact that some of these people had really interesting ideas that didn't necessarily align to it, which there's some kind of irony there. But I found them a little smug, and so I just kind of quit watching his videos. He's a monster player, though, an absolutely monster player. I don't have anything in 432 right now, no. I've done it before, but you can't get away with using them in a band in that context unless you can get somebody else to do it. If you can get the whole band to do it, then great. But I've got everything in 440 now, or thereabouts, because I've got some instruments that just won't intonate right. Tom Waits is the heir apparent to Captain Beefheart. He's someone who kind of forged his own path. He started off doing more kind of singer-songwriter kind of stuff, and he wrote good songs. But he definitely sort of evolved and decided he was just going to do his own thing, and made some really interesting music. But I will say, if you've never listened to Captain Beefheart, it's probably going to be harder to sort of get Tom Waits. And if you've never listened to Howlin' Wolf, it's probably going to be hard to get Captain Beefheart. Along with some, because he kind of merged those sort of sounds, these sort of really brusque and rough Americana and blues sounds with ideas from more avant-garde and experimental music. And Tom Waits kind of took that and rolled with it and sort of did his own thing with it. Tom Waits is actually probably a lot more approachable on the whole than Beefheart is. what Ophisad is talking about is something that Wright asked about the other night. You can actually intonate your instruments to a different standard frequency. Late 1800s, early 1900s, instruments started being able to be tuned a little bit higher without breaking, and eventually the ISO, the standards organization, decided to essentially make 440 hertz the standard for this frequency of A. So everything is tuned and intonated relative to that. But before that, and still in many places, you'll find very different frequency, center frequencies or standard frequencies for tuning. Oh no, man! Like everything. As you listen to Trout Mask Replica, every single thing on that was orchestrated specifically by Beefheart. He told them precisely what he wanted them to do. He gave them a certain amount of liberty in interpreting that, but he knew how he wanted them to be put together, especially rhythmically. That's the really important thing with Beefheart, is the rhythm. So there's a lot of conspiratorial is not exactly the right term, but there's a lot of like new agey kind of stuff about 432, that somehow it's going to like magically reduce your stress and cure your cancer and all that kind of business. I don't know. I said I've played in it before. Didn't make me feel any better. It does, I will say, it does make the music feel not exactly more relaxed, but it gives it a little bit different vibe. I guess because the strings in the case of a guitar aren't under quite as much tension. The frequencies are a little bit lower. But that's going to interact with the instruments, with various instruments in different ways. It kind of gives it the E8 theory of everything. I don't think I know that one. Usually theories of everything tend to run into problems. Let's go to a bigger reverb. Real outer space hours, bros. they don't need excuses to power grab. I don't know how sensitive Twitch is to discussion about the ongoing situation though. So if it's like YouTube, so let's try to steer away from that. Like some weird underwater tone. It's a pretty chord. Ultrasonic? What do you mean by ultrasonic? Uh-oh, Kaz wants the tube zipper. Might be described as ultrasonic. Well, I don't know if it's ultrasonic. You can't hear it. I need to make a list. I wonder if I can figure out how to make a list of every pedal, so when when people want to request pedals, they can see what the options are. Can maybe make it a command, but then that would like absolutely destroy chat if I made it a chat command. I mean, when I think of ultrasonic, I think of like repeating sound waves. So I mean, that could be something that had like an oscillator, like an LFO or something. So like either a tremolo pedal or a phaser or something like that has an LFO that can move really fast. Let's see. I got a couple things that can do that, if that's what you want. So let's do... We'll remove... If we're going to do tube zipper, then we need to drop the Robotalk, because we don't need two filters in the same lineup. Alright, so we'll axe the Robotalk. Let's axe the Pog, because the Pog's noise floor is just annoying me. I'm going to have to like take it apart and clean everything in it or something. See if that helps. It may just be getting too old and too used though. Let's do, so we'll do tube zipper and we'll do a tremolo. We'll do a tremolo pedal that can get pretty fast. So I can remember to get the battery out of it. So here's the tube zipper. There it is. And let's change up. Let's change up our drive pedal too. Let's mix it up. We'll get something different just for fun. this one. Where I don't know where its box went. Somewhere else. All right. So what we're going to add to the signal chain is the tube zipper, which is a filter, a tube-driven filter that gets really wacky. This was designed by a guy in France who used to go by the name PureTube on the internet. He was rather sort of infamous for his crazy designs. Do we want to put it after or before the filter? That's a fun question. Let's put it in front of the filter. That'll probably help maximize our weirdness. Then we're going to use, I'm going to throw this guy in the loop. This is one of my favorite pedals of all time. This is the Small Sound Big Sound Mini, which does everything from clean boost to fuzz, but it's got a great EQ section, so I'm going to use it to help tame this fuzz pedal. This is another mid-fi electronics pedal called the Psych Bike, which is based on these old 60s really, really buzzy spaghetti western style fuzzes. Alright, so we need to get these a little farther over this way so the power will reach. Okay. I have to tighten up that power jack too, it sounds like. These have blindingly bright white LEDs. It's ridiculous. Don't look directly into them if you ever buy one. So we're going to go from U to U. Then we're going to go from U to U. Starting to get cable chaos up here. All right, then we got to figure out how to get from this one into this one. I need a longer cable for that. Tighten that guy up. He's getting a little loose. Alright, then we're going to go from U to U. Maybe. Then we're going to plug the tube zipper in over here. Because the tube zipper, like all of the Electro Harmonix tube pedals, use this weird metal blade power adapter. Alright, make sure everything is turned down on that to start with, because it'll get extreme. Then guitar goes into this one. Alright. We should be all hooked up. We now have 6 pedals hooked up. And ought to be able to make a god-awful racket with them. Let's make sure all of our volumes are turned down. Alright, so this is our clean signal. Alright, let's start dialing some stuff in. I'm going to dial this guy in to be very dark. I'm going to stay pretty clean because I'm going to run the fuzz into it. for a moment. Come on, crappy switch. There we go. Woo! So this fuzz pedal, this is, ow, gosh, my nose. Really, really, really sputtery and a little bit of octave going on in there. Alright, so then we're going to use this guy to tame the treble on it. Unity gain. Alright, then let's get our trim dial in. Interesting thing about this is this pedal is about halfway between like a tremolo pedal and a vibrato pedal. So as we start to bring the depth up, we start to hear that sort of vibrato-y, almost photocell kind of sound. If we turn the depth way up, we get this like asymmetrical kink in the sound, which gives us almost the impression of like a square wave, which is pretty cool. Alright, so now we're going to start dialing in the tube zipper, which is an experience. So I'm going to bring the input gain up. Start bringing the res up. Just the right spot for the sensitivity. down dips. Alright, so now let's start hanging our trim. Sort of a short delay going sensitivity and see if we can get it to slow. Turn over slowly. if you ever wanted to use an AM radio as your fuzz. That's definitely one we need the teeth hurt emoji for. Whew. Thing is, I could make it even brighter. Goodness. It's like someone tearing paper. Hey, Ride, what's going on? I've never had the tone control this high on this pedal. I usually keep it like all the way down. Or close to it. Woo! Goodness. It's a more extreme sound than that. That's, I mean, that sounds pretty much just like a fuzz and a univibe. You get this big, like, synthy sweep on here, though. Especially when we get into the lower notes, like it really kicks in. Ow. or destroyed. Completely eats all of our sustain though. So you can get those notes to just really ring out the way you want. You can do some interesting things with it though. Woo. So we want sensitivity. Completely destroying the signal now. And having fun doing it. Oh, that's rank. That's rank. That's like a really extreme fixed wah. Oh gosh, that's disgusting. In an absolutely amazing way. Woo! Yeah, that's how it goes. Dun, dun, dun. That was that song, what was that, Elastica? I think it was. They totally ripped it off from Wire. So I think Wire was in like B. Absolutely, dude. Wire is amazing, but was it Elastica or Republica? I can't remember. One of those British like sort of pop rock bands or psych rock bands in the '90s totally ripped off the riff from Wire for their song. I think they played it in A though. Dun, 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 running on anything's good enough. Blah da 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 da. Da 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 da. Now that you got me down, roundabout and roundabout, and something, something, something. Another heart just made the trade for connection. That's what it's called. I don't understand how there's something and da somewhere inside a connection is made. Yeah, they totally ripped off Three Girl Rumba. Totally. Yeah, they were actually coming. They were coming to Atlanta, or supposed to be sometime over the last few months, but I think it got canceled. Either got canceled or was like right before this all started. That is a gnarly tone. An absolutely gnarly tone. I love it. Can we make it gnarlier? That's too much clipping. So what if we sub this pedal out? No, that's actually just a good tone. We don't want good tone. We want disgusting tone. No, for real, that's pretty banging now. Just turn the low end, the bass all the way up. It's starting to turn into doom tone if we do that though. You and all of a sudden you're exciters. Completely lose the ability to palm mute with that much low end. So that's with the Mini in front. This is just the tube zipper. I mean, we can actually drive it more, too. And it's more kind of crumbly. It's more almost like a tube fuzz, which is kind of amusing. They hit it with the JFETs from the Mini, actually tightens it up. Heard it without the mini, then with the fuzz. No, the fuzz just destroys it. That's like mega unstable. No, it just needs if we really want to zoom out, we need a guitar tuned super low. Hold on. Let me go get... I know precisely which guitar to get. That should take us... Codes and song titles. Keep Watch actually has my designated stoner metal guitar, but this one, once it's fully fixed up, will be. I'm not sure. What are you talking about? What are you talking about, Grim? What level? Wow, you're way out of tune. Yeah, this is a Motor Avenue guitar built by a guy named Mark Fuqua. He builds guitars for like Josh Homme, guys from Queens of the Stone Age, stuff like that. This guitar has got the chonk. through mahogany body, neck through ebony fingerboard. This has a wolf tone humbucker in the bridge. I'm probably going to change it out for something a little different. This is a pretty vintage style humbucker. Probably going to change it out for something a little edgier. Maybe like a Gretsch style pickup or something. The neck humbucker, these weren't the original pickups. It had P94s, which were single coil sized P90s in it, or humbucker sized P90s in it originally. And somebody changed it out for these wolf tones, which are fantastic pickups. But because it's a neck through, the neck angle is very, very shallow. And so the neck humbucker, he put like a Les Paul depth, like the extra long legs in there. And so the neck humbucker wouldn't adjust down properly. It was just right up under the strings. So I just took it out. A dimebucker, no. Now I'm not going to go with a super high gain or a super hot pickup in this. It's kind of dark already because it's all mahogany, neck through, all mahogany, so you don't get the transients from the sound of a bolt in a bolt-on guitar. So probably going to go with like a TV Jones Powertron, which is a Gretsch style Filtertron in a humbucker mount, because that should give us, we'll still have some crunch and output of a humbucker, but then we'll have some extra high end. Well, whatever it is, it has to be shallow. I've even thought about getting the Lace Alumitone, since they actually don't even have a body, like a bass or a bobbin at all. So like if it's going to be like a Les Paul style humbucker or something, it's got to be completely flat. It can't have legs that extend down. It can't have pole pieces extending underneath the back of the pickup at all. But I mean, this is like just a balls to the wall rock and roll guitar. Getting like straight up sludgy. Ah, dang it. All right, hold on. All right, let's see. No, not caps lock. I need Rusty to build me a keyboard. Leaning over this thing sucks. If Rusty will get undead. Guitar. This is a Motor Avenue McQueen prototype. So he built two of them with this body shape, and then he changed to a slightly more Les Paul body shape. You can still sort of see this shape in the cutaway, but then the lower bout becomes less extreme. This is a super, super, super wide lower bout. so Guitar Command is up to date now. Yeah, Deathbucker is an option. Like all of the new Lace Alumitone pickups are very thin. Yeah, he's most famous for the guitar that Josh Homme plays, which is the Bel Air, which is like a super wide single cutaway body, almost like the Gretsch. Was it the Super Chet kind of shape, with usually like the cat's eye sound hole. But then the McQueen now is more kind of like a Les Paul. And then he makes one called the Fastback, which is almost like an SG Junior, but with a totally different body shape, with a really extreme body shape. But it's like single P90. But yeah, if the Gretsch style pickups, if the TV Jones won't fit, then I'm probably going to put the Lace pickups in it. Because they're actually pretty bright and clear. Even the one called the Deathbucker is a very bright and clear sounding pickup, which I think will go pretty well with the kind of dark voicing of this guitar. The fretwork on this guitar, I wish you guys, this is another one where I wish you guys could play this. The fretwork on this guitar is unbelievable. Like how low and fast you can get the action without any kind of buzzing or choking out. It's unreal. This guy actually apprenticed under the builder who built my McInturf, my main guitar, Terry McInturf. He worked in his shop for several years in the late 90s and early 2000s, and then went out on his own. That's almost like a brass sound, like an old synthesizer brass sound. That's neat. The gold foils might fit if they make one in like a humbucker mount. You know, a traditional gold foil mount actually sort of sits almost on top of the top of the guitar, or well, does sit on top of the guitar, on top of the pickguard. You know, so I need one that actually mounts to traditional humbucker mounts, but is still shallow enough. I need to remember exactly where I've got these settings, so I can remember. Ah, Christ, friggin' white LED. Jeez. So the tone is at about 10 o'clock, and fuzz is pretty much all the way up. I'm blind in one eye now. You get almost like an ARP sound. was a pretty cool sound. Oh, to have started an hour late. Wound up going some pretty cool places. Oh. Well, yeah, it's 1:15. Okay, we definitely got to wrap this up. Thank you so much, everybody, for hanging out while I made a bunch of weird noise and racket. If you haven't hit the follow button, hit the follow button. If you're not in the Discord, get in the Discord. We should be back this Friday night. We are doing Friday Night Funk. We will be grooving on bass. We'll also be doing some beginner bass lesson stuff because Bunny, one of our new followers, is getting his first bass, I think, sometime this week. And so we want to get some basic stuff out there to start getting him prepped, get him ready, get him going. But plus, I wanted to play bass last week anyway, and everybody went, "Oh, guitar, let's play guitar." Blah, 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 blah. And banjo, friggin' banjo. All right, so let's go. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks, Grim. Thanks, Ride. Thanks, Ofacade. Thanks, Death Prince. Or, no, Death Priest. There we go. If you're still around. Thanks, everybody. And be back Friday night. And I'll see y'all next time.